Picture a house. Not your house. Not anything close to your house. Picture something the size of a small town folded in on itself. 37 rooms above stairs. Another 40 below, if you count the cellars and the coal holes and the scullery and the game larder that's kept so cold even in summer that your breath comes out in clouds. A kitchen the size of a church nave with a fire that never goes out. Not once, not in winter, not in the dead of August. That fire has been burning continuously for longer than you've been alive. Now fill it with people, not the people you'd expect, not the lords and ladies, not the family who owns all this. They're here, of course, somewhere up in those bright rooms with their plasterwork ceilings and their paintings of ancestors who look faintly disappointed in everything. No, fill it with the other people, the ones who carry their coal and empty their chamber pots and stand in doorways waiting for a bell to ring, the ones who light the fires before dawn so the rooms are warm when the family wakes, the ones who iron the morning newspaper so the ink doesn't leave marks on fine gloved hands. Yes, they iron the newspaper every morning with a warm iron so the pages don't crinkle. In 1755 there are roughly 300,000 domestic servants in England. 1 in every 8 households employs at least one. In the great houses of the aristocracy and landed gentry, you might have 40, 50, even 80 people employed just to keep the machinery running, just to make it look effortless. That's the trick, you see, the whole point of the operation. Everything must look effortless, easy, natural, as if the coal arrived by magic, as if the food cooked itself, as if the silver polished itself to that mirror shine every morning. You must do it, and you must do it invisibly, and God help you if anyone ever notices you doing it. That is the first rule, the one nobody writes down. The one you learn on your first day, usually through pain. We're going there tonight, not as guests coming through the front door with a trunk of luggage and a letter of introduction, not as the family sitting down to a 9-course dinner while someone plays the harpsichord in the next room. We're going in through the servants' entrance, around the side of the house, down the stone steps that are worn smooth in the middle because hundreds of feet have used them before yours, through the door that's never locked because it's never closed, through the smell of cabbage and tallow and damp wool and wood smoke and something beneath all of that, something ancient and embedded in the stone itself that you will come to know as the smell of service. I do these history sleep stories, and honestly, I'm never quite sure what you're here for. Maybe you actually want to sleep. Maybe you want to understand how a candle was snuffed without leaving a smell. Maybe you're the kind of person who lies awake at night wondering what it would have been, like to carry 8 jugs of hot water before 6 in the morning, every morning, up 4 flights of stairs on stone steps in complete darkness, because the family's portion of the house gets the candles and you don't. Either way, get comfortable. Here we go. The cart leaves the village of Thornwick at 4:30 in the morning. You know this because the church clock strikes the half-hour just as the driver, a red-faced man named Jacobs who smells powerfully of horses and tobacco, clicks his tongue at the pair of cobs and the wheels start to turn on the frozen mud. You're sitting in the back with your bundle. A bundle. That's what you have. Everything you own, wrapped in a piece of oilcloth and tied with twine. Inside, 2 shirts, a second pair of woolen stockings, a small knife, a letter from the vicar of Thornwick, Reverend Aldous Pembridge, written in his careful hand on creamy paper, vouching for your character, your honesty, and your willingness to work. Your mother pressed a shilling into your hand as you left. Your father said nothing, but he stood in the doorway and watched the cart until you couldn't see him anymore. You're 16 years old. You've never been more than 12 miles from Thornwick. It's November. The cold comes up through the boards of the cart and settles into your backside, your thighs, your hands. You pull your coat tighter. The coat is your father's old one, cut down and restitched by your mother over 3 evenings, and it is wool, and it is thick, but it is not enough. Not at this hour, not in this weather. The sky above the road is the particular heavy grey of pre-dawn, the colour of pewter or cold porridge, and the bare trees lining the lane are reaching shapes against it, stripped of leaves, suggesting things in the dark. No frost, at least. Yesterday there was frost hard enough to crack, little glittering explosions when you walked across the yard. Today the air is just grey and damp and cold enough to make your nose run. You wipe your nose on your sleeve and immediately think, don't do that. You're going into service. You're going to have to unlearn half of everything you know. The vicar told you. Sitting in the parlour of the rectory, which smelled of paper and boiled beef, he told you what to expect. Sort of. He told you to be obedient, to be honest, to work hard and thank God for the opportunity. He told you the name of the housekeeper, Mrs. Ackroyd, and said she was firm but fair. He told you what wages to expect. £4 a year, plus your board and lodging, which is more than your father earns at the mill, and more than you've ever had at one time in your life. He did not tell you about the rules. He probably didn't know them. Reverend Pembridge has never blacked a boot in his life. He has a cook and a housemaid of his own. He doesn't know what happens below stairs. Not really. The cart jolts over a pothole. Your bundle slides. You grab it. The driver says nothing. He said 3 words. When you climbed in, "Sit tight, lad." That was it. That's been the entirety of your conversation for the past 40 minutes. You watch the countryside go past in the grey light. The fields, the hedgerows, the occasional farmhouse with smoke rising from its chimney, somebody already up, somebody already working. The world is full of people already working at this hour in the cold before the sun is even thinking about it. After about an hour the road changes. It gets better, smoother, better maintained. Not quite paved, but graded, the surface kept up. Someone cares about this road. Someone pays to keep it in good condition. You know who, even before you see the gateposts. They're stone, each one topped with a sphere the size of your head. Between them, iron gates standing open. Beyond the gates, a gravel drive curving away into parkland. And at the end of the drive, a long way away, glimpsed through bare trees, Harrowfield Hall. You will remember this for the rest of your life. The way it emerged from the morning grey, stone by stone, detail by detail, as the cart crunched up the drive and the house revealed itself. Not quickly, not all at once. Harrowfield doesn't do things like that. It lets you understand it gradually. Lets you feel the weight of it building in your chest as the distance closes. First, the shape, long and low in the centre, then rising at each end into wings. 3 stories of windows arranged in rows so precise they look like they were placed with a ruler. Which they were. Everything here was placed with a ruler. That's the point. Then, the stone. Yorkshire stone, the colour of old bone, darkened in the joints by weather and age. How old? Parts of the house go back to 1630. That central block was built by the second Lord Harrow after the Civil War, when having a house that looked solid and permanent was a statement about who you were and who had won. The east wing went up in 1702. The orangery you can just see at the southern end, all glass and iron, went up in 1740, just 15 years ago. The family that lives here has been building and adding and improving for over a century, each generation putting their mark on the stone, and the result is this. Something too large to take in all at once, something that makes you feel small without meaning to. Then, the windows, dozens of them. How many? You'll count them eventually, on a slow afternoon when you've been polishing the glass in the West Wing. 87 windows. 87 windows that have to be cleaned from inside and out once a week. That's someone's job. That's going to be someone's job. The cart doesn't go to the front. Of course not. Jacobs doesn't even hesitate. He turns the cobs before the main gates, follows a narrower track around the side of the house, into what is unmistakably the working part of the estate. Stable yards, a kitchen garden behind a high wall, a laundry, a wood yard, a coal store the size of a small house, already piled with black lumps that will last all winter if they're careful. At the bottom of a set of stone steps, worn smooth in the middle, Jacobs pulls up. "Servant's entrance," he says. 2 words this time. He's feeling expansive. You climb down with your bundle, and you stand at the top of those steps, and you look at the door, and you understand for the first time something that will shape every day for the next several years of your life. You will never use the front door. It isn't that you're forbidden to use it. Nobody will say, explicitly, you're not permitted to enter through the front door. But you won't. Nobody below a certain level ever does. The front door is for the family, for their guests, for the people to whom the house shows its formal face. Everything else, all the actual life of the place, all the work and the sweat and the carrying and the cooking and the cleaning, enters and exits through here, through this door, worn smooth, always opened. You go down the steps. The cold has found a new way into you now, coming up from the stone through the soles of your shoes, which are not good shoes. You will need better shoes, eventually, when you can afford them. The door opens before you reach it. A girl your age, maybe slightly younger, in a grey dress and a white cap, looks at you with the kind of expression that communicates several things simultaneously. Curiosity, mild contempt, and the specific exhaustion of someone who has already been up for 2 hours. "You the new hall boy?" "Yes, Thomas Kite. Reverend Pembridge from Thornwick Centre. Mrs. Ackroyd's waiting." She jerks her head. "Come in then. Don't stand there letting the cold in." You come in. The smell hits you before your eyes adjust. There's not one smell. That's the thing about great houses. That's the thing about below stairs in particular. It's layers, built up over decades, embedded in the plaster and the woodwork and the stone flags of the floor. First, cabbage. Something has been boiled. Thing. Multiple things, probably. And cabbage is doing most of the talking. That sweet rank vegetable smell, not unpleasant exactly, but assertive, filling the low-ceilinged passage like a presence. Second, tallow. Candles. A lot of them. The kind that aren't wax. Wax is for upstairs, for the drawing-room candelabras and the bedroom sconces. Down here it's tallow, rendered animal fat, which burns with yellow light and a smell that's somewhere between a barn and a candle factory. Third, wood smoke. The kitchen fire. The smell of burning oak and coal mixed together. The slightly metallic back note of coal underneath the cleaner smoke of the wood. The combination producing something that is not unpleasant, that is in fact warm in a purely olfactory sense, the smell of heat happening nearby. Fourth, and this one takes you a moment to identify, damp wool. The washing from the scullery, hung to dry near the kitchen range. Wool that's been wet and is slowly steaming itself dry, filling the air, with that particular sheep memory smell, lanolin and damp fibre, and underneath all of it, the stone. Old stone. Yorkshire stone that has absorbed 300 years of cooking smells and coal dust, and the sweat of people working hard in small rooms, and the particular cold that stone buildings keep even in the warmest months. A cold that lives in the walls and releases itself into the air on damp November mornings. You breathe all of this in, and you file it away. This will be the smell of your mornings for years. The passage you're standing in is low-ceilinged, stone-flagged, lit by 2 tallow candles in iron holders on the wall. Doors lead off on both sides. A larder. You can tell by the cold air leaking around the edge. A storeroom. Another storeroom. A passage leading deeper into the house. The girl, you don't have a name yet, is already walking, and you follow. The kitchen is ahead. You can hear it before you see it. The crack and shift of the fire, the sound of something being stirred in a heavy pot. A woman's voice saying something sharp and quick to someone else. You pass through the door and into warmth. The kitchen is large. You've heard of large kitchens. The vicar described it, but you didn't quite believe it. This room is 30 feet long and 20 wide. The ceiling is high. The fireplace at the far end is wide enough to roast an ox in, which is exactly what it's designed for. The range, a newer addition, iron, more controlled than open fire cooking, sits beside it. There are scrubbed wooden tables down both sides, cutting surfaces scored with years of knife marks. Pots and pans hang from hooks on the ceiling. Copper, mostly, gleaming even in the candlelight because somebody polishes them regularly. 3 people are in here already, working. A stout woman in a cook's apron is stirring a pot with a long wooden spoon and watching you with the assessment of someone who has received many new hall boys and found most of them wanting. 2 kitchen maids, younger, are chopping something, onions by the smell, with the concentrated silence of people who know that if they talk they will be told not to. The stout woman says nothing to you. She just looks. It's the kind of look that says, I see you. I am deciding whether you will be any good. I have not decided yet. You stand there and let yourself be decided about. Then the girl who brought you still don't have her name, says, Mrs. Ackroyd says he's to wait in the passage. The stout woman nods, goes back to stirring. You wait in the passage. She comes from upstairs. You hear her before you see her. A particular kind of footstep on stone stairs. Measured, unhurried, deliberate. The footstep of someone who has somewhere to be, and is taking exactly the time required to get there, and not a second more. Mrs. Ackroyd is 53 years old, and she has been housekeeper of Harrowfield Hall for 19 years, and she looks like she's been housekeeper of Harrowfield Hall for 19 years. Not old, not tired, just settled into her authority the way good furniture settles into a room. So naturally you stop noticing it as an addition and start perceiving it as fundamental to the shape of things. She is dressed in black wool, a bunch of keys at her waist. There are probably 40 keys on that ring. Each key opens something. She knows what every single one of them opens. She has never lost a key in 19 years. She stops in front of you, looks you over in the same way the cook did, but more thoroughly, head to toe. Taking inventory, you stand straight. You look at her directly. You remember the vicar saying that. Thomas Kite. Yes, ma'am. From Thornwick. Yes, ma'am. I have your letter. She doesn't produce it. It's somewhere about her person, presumably, but she doesn't need to refer to it. She's already read it and memorized what matters. Reverend Pembridge says you're willing and honest. He says, your father works at the mill and your mother keeps a clean house. Yes, ma'am. She looks at your coat, your shoes, your bundle. You'll need better shoes. Yes, ma'am. I know. Something shifts very slightly in her expression. Not approval exactly, just the recognition that you're not stupid. Come with me, she says. And this is it. This is the tour that begins everything. The tour that will, over the next 2 hours, deposit more information in your head than the previous 16 years of your life combined. The tour in which you will be shown not the house, but the world beneath the house, the other country that exists inside these walls. She takes you through the kitchen. The cook, Mrs. Hargreaves, nods but doesn't stop stirring, and through a door at the far end into a scullery, smaller than the kitchen, cold, stone floor, stone walls, a large stone sink with a pump above it. This is where the heavy washing happens. Pots, pans, the daily mountain of dishes. The scullery maid, a girl who looks about 14 and whose name turns out to be Bess, is up to her elbows in grey water, scrubbing last night's soup pot with a brush, and a look of distant suffering. She doesn't look up. The scullery! Mrs. Ackroyd says this as though she is establishing a fact about the universe, which she is. All washing of kitchen equipment is done here. The scullery maid's responsibility. When Bess is busy, which is always, the kitchen maids assist. When they are busy, which is usually, you may be asked. You look at the grey water and the brush and the massive iron pot and you nod. Yes, ma'am. Through another door. The larder, cold and dim. Stone shelves holding various covered dishes. The remains of last night's roast. A dressed calf's head under a cloth that you try not to look at directly. Several cheeses in different stages of maturity. 2 bottles of wine, a basket of apples, a crock of butter. The food stores are Mrs. Hargreaves' domain. Nothing leaves this larder without her knowledge. Nothing. Is that understood? Yes, ma'am. A look. You think I'm saying this because servants steal food. I am saying this because servants sometimes take food without understanding what's been allocated for what purpose. And then there isn't enough for dinner. And then there is a crisis, and crises reflect badly on the household. Don't create crises through carelessness. You file this away. Don't create crises through carelessness. That's not the same as don't steal, which is what you expected. That's something more complicated, more specific, more useful. She takes you further, the butler's pantry. Mr. Finch, the butler, is in here. He's seated at a small table covered with silver. Candlesticks, salt cellars, a magnificent soup tureen that he is examining with the attention of a doctor examining a patient. He is a thin man, perhaps 60, with the most perfectly still face you have ever seen. He could be carved from the same stone as the house. He looks at you over a candlestick. The new hall boy, Mrs. Ackroyd says. Kite, Mr. Finch says, trying the name on, deciding whether it passes muster. He apparently decides it does because he goes back to the candlestick. You'll learn the rules from Mrs. Ackroyd, but I'll tell you this once, and once only, and it will not require repeating. The silver is my responsibility. You touch the silver when I tell you to, how I tell you to, and not otherwise. You will learn which cloth for which metal. You will learn which polish for which situation. You will not improvise. Silver does not tolerate improvisation. Yes, sir. He goes back to the candlestick. You've been dismissed. Mrs. Ackroyd takes you through a passage that runs along the base of the house, beneath the main rooms. It is the servants' highway. You will spend years in this passage. Years. She explains as she walks. The bellboard is there. She gestures to a board on the wall where a row of brass bells hang, each one labelled with a room. Drawing room, morning room, library, master bedroom, mistress's bedroom, blue room, red room. There are 14 bells. When a bell rings, you identify which bell, you go to that room, and you ask what is needed. If Mr. Finch is available, he goes. If he is not, the senior footman goes. If neither is available, you go. What do I say? She pauses. Looks at you as if this question is both intelligent and slightly beside the point. You say, "You rang my lord," or "You rang my lady" as appropriate. Then you wait. You do not add to this. You do not ask questions until asked. You do not offer opinions unless invited. A good servant answers questions that have been asked. He does not anticipate questions that haven't been. Another rule, delivered flat as fact, she continues. You will rise at 5:30. You will have your boots and your livery on by 6. By 6 you will have laid the fires in the morning room, the library and the dining room, using the coal from the bucket in the yard which you will have filled before dressing. The family rises at 8. By 8 every fire in every public room will be burning. Every candle will have been replaced if burned less than half. Every curtain will have been opened in sequence from east to west following the light. Every surface visible from the doorway will have been dusted. All of this, done invisibly, before the family has opened their eyes. Between the family's use of the rooms and the cleaning of the rooms there is a window. You learn this window. Most of the public rooms are used in the afternoon and evening. They are cleaned in the early morning. The family does not see the cleaning happen. They see the result. The process is your business, not theirs. This is the foundational rule, the rule from which everything else descends. The family must not see the process. You must be there before they arrive. You must be gone before they notice you are there. Everything that has to happen to keep this house running must happen in the negative spaces between their movements, the gaps, the early hours, the moments when they have stepped out of a room and haven't returned yet. You are, in a very specific sense, required to not exist. You will learn over the next weeks and months that this is not a metaphor. Here is something nobody tells you before your first day, because it sounds too strange, too abstract. It only becomes real when you experience it. When you are carrying coals to a room and you hear footsteps in the corridor, you stop. You flatten yourself against the wall. You make yourself as small as possible. If there is an alcove, you step into it. If there is a door, you step behind it. You wait. The footsteps pass. You continue. This is not a rule anyone has written down. No one has said to you explicitly, when members of the family walk past you in the corridor, you disappear. But you will understand it within your first morning from watching the other servants do it, from the way Mr. Finch seems to simply not be present in spaces where the family is moving through them, from the way the senior footman, a man named William, seems to appear only when needed and evaporate the moment he isn't. And when I say disappear, I need you to understand what that means in 1755 Harrowfield. This isn't modern awkward in the corridor where you make eye contact with your boss coming out of the lift and have to decide whether to make small talk. This is architectural. This is systematic. The house was built with it in mind. The back stairs exist precisely so that servants can move through the building without using the main staircase. The passages exist so that coal and laundry and cleaning materials can travel from one end of the house to the other without crossing the family's line of sight. The first time a family member passes you in the corridor and you don't disappear fast enough, you'll know. Not because they say anything, not because they look angry. They won't look anything. They will look straight ahead, their gaze passing through you as if you are a piece of furniture, and this is somehow worse than any reprimand. You are not a person to them in this moment. You are part of the house. You are the mechanism by which the house functions. The only appropriate response is to be the best possible mechanism, to anticipate, to be already there when needed and already gone when not. Mrs. Ackroyd says none of this directly. She would perhaps say it is simply how things are done, how they have always been done, how everyone at Harrowfield conducts themselves. She would perhaps say it reflects well on a servant to be unobtrusive, but what it is, stripped bare, is this: your labour must be invisible. You must work harder than most people ever will, and then you must pretend, in the presence of those for whom you work, that no work is being done. First day. That's the first thing you learn. Your room is in the attic. When Mrs. Ackroyd says attic, you think of the attic in your father's house in Thornwick. A pitched space under the roof, low on the sides, smelling of dust and apples stored for winter, uncomfortable but somehow cosy, full of the debris of family history. This is not that. This is a room with a ceiling low enough that you have to duck your head at the highest point of the pitch. A single window roughly the size of a book, which admits grey sky and nothing else. A bed. A narrow thing, wooden frame, a straw mattress, pushed against the outer wall where it will be coldest. A peg on the wall for your coat and livery, a wooden box for your things. That's everything. The room is shared. There is another narrow bed on the other side, Daniel Crook's second footman, who is 22 and has been here 4 years, and who is currently somewhere else in the house, so you won't meet him until this evening. The floor is bare boards, so cold that even through your stockings you can feel the winter coming up through them. There is no fireplace. There is no provision for one. Heat is something that exists in other parts of the house. Heat is for the family and the kitchens, and the servants who are lucky enough to work near the kitchen. You sit on the edge of the bed. The straw mattress makes a dry, unhappy sound. You look around your new room, your home for the foreseeable future, and you think, this is what I have. This is what I have traded Thornwick for. These walls and this ceiling and this window showing me this exact portion of grey Yorkshire sky. Then you stand up, because sitting is not going to be permitted for a while yet, and you put your bundle in the wooden box, and you button your better coat, and you go back downstairs. Because the day has only just started. The livery is waiting on the bed when you come back from your first hour of work, summoned by the girl with no name. Her name is Agnes, you've learned, and she is the youngest, housemaid, and she has been here 8 months, and she acts like 8 months is 8 years, which you will understand later, because at Harrowfield 8 months is absolutely an eternity in certain ways. The livery is, in its way, magnificent. Dark blue coat, brass buttons, knee breeches, stockings, a waistcoat with a small design embroidered on the pocket, white cravat. You put it on with help from Daniel Crooks, who materialized at some point in the last hour, and is now watching you dress with the expression of someone who's watched several new hall boys attempt this, and expects it to go badly. Cravat first, he says, then the waistcoat, coat last. You're figuring this out. The buttons, Third button from the top is slightly loose. Don't pull it or it'll come off and Mrs. Ackroyd will make you pay for the repair. 3 shillings. 3 shillings is nearly a week of your wages. You do not pull the third button from the top. The coat fits, mostly. It was made for the previous hall boy, who was apparently approximately your size, although slightly shorter in the leg. The breeches end just below your knee in a way that feels slightly wrong. It'll do, Daniel says, without particular kindness, long as you're not standing in front of Lord Harrow for an extended period. Lord Harrow, your employer, you haven't seen him yet, haven't seen any of the family yet. What's he like, you ask? Daniel considers this question in the way of someone who has opinions and has learned to be careful about sharing them. He's what he is, he says finally. Fair enough if you do your job. Short-tempered if you don't. Don't make him notice you, and you'll be fine. Don't make him notice you. Again, in different words. The same instruction. You're beginning to understand the shape of the thing. The first specific task assigned to you, after the tour and the livery and a breakfast you eat standing in the passage, porridge, hard bread, weak, small beer, eaten quickly because the porridge doesn't stay warm, is the boots. Mr. Finch directs you to a bench near the servants' entrance where a row of boots has been set out. They belong to the members of the household currently in residence. Lord Harrow, his eldest son Mr. George Harrow, who is visiting with his wife, and 2 house guests whose names you don't yet know. 6 pairs of boots. They are all to varying degrees muddy from yesterday's riding. Beside the bench is a box. In the box, a selection of brushes, 3 different grades from soft to stiff. 3 different bottles and tins of polish and blacking. A soft cloth for buffing. A bone tool for the stitching. Mr. Finch looks at you. 6 pairs, he says. I need all 6 pairs done and on this shelf by the time the family comes down at 8. An hour and a half. Yes, sir. Do you know how to black boots? You have blacked your father's one good pair of boots twice for church and for market days. You say this. Forget what you know. He picks up one boot, turns it in the light from the passage window. This is hand-lasted calf leather. This costs more than you will earn in a year. When you work on it, you feel that. You work with that knowledge in your hands. He sets it down. First, the mud. Dry mud. Soft brush. Gentle. Following the grain of the leather, not against it. You're not scrubbing. You're coaxing. If the mud is still damp, let it dry first. Do not work wet mud into the leather. Do not. Yes, sir. Second, the polish. This tin. He taps a round flat tin of dark paste. This is for the calf skin, not this bottle. He moves it aside. Which is for riding boots, not this liquid. Another move. Which is for patent leather, which you will not touch until I have shown you how, because patent leather is unforgiving and expensive. This tin. Apply with this cloth, small circular movements, working it in. Not too much. The mistake beginners make is too much polish. You nod. Third, drying. You let the polish set. You let. Not long, 5 minutes while you work on the next pair. Then buff. The soft cloth. Long strokes. Not circular at this stage. Long strokes following the length of the boot. He demonstrates. 30 seconds with the cloth. And a boot that looked flat and dull suddenly has depth in it. A gleam that seems to come from inside the leather rather than from the surface. Fourth, the sole. Brush the sole, check the heel. There's a particular way to... He turns the boot over, shows you the welt where the upper meets the sole. Any mud in here becomes water in wet weather. Get it out. He hands you the boot, hands you the appropriate brush. Begin. You begin. For the next hour and 20 minutes you do nothing but boots. Your hands learn the leather. They learn the difference in weight between Lord Harrow's boots, which are substantial, built for a tall man, and his son's, which are narrower, fashionable, with a slight heel that requires extra care. You learn the geography of each boot, where the leather is worn and needs particular attention, where a seam is beginning to loosen, where mud has found a crease and lodged there obstinately. Your hands begin to know things your head hasn't told them yet. This is how craft works. Your back begins to ache from bending over the bench. The cold from the stone floor works through your shoes, through your stockings, into your feet. Your fingers, even with the work warming them, are stiff and slightly clumsy at first, slow to respond, the knuckles protesting the unfamiliar grip. But they warm up. By the third pair you can feel the leather properly. You can feel, under your fingertips, the difference in quality between Lord Harrow's boots and one of the house guests. The guests are newer but cheaper, the leather stiffer, less supple. You find yourself adjusting your pressure accordingly without thinking about it. Your hands are deciding. You finish the 6th boot at 7 minutes to 8. 6 pairs, clean, polished to a shine that, when you hold them up to the light from the window, gives back a reflection you can see your own face in. Not clearly, but you're there. Mr. Finch comes and examines each one. He says nothing about 5 pairs. He picks up the 5th boot, one of the house guests, and holds it to the light and points to a place at the toe where the polish is slightly uneven. You see that? Not a question. Yes, sir. Do you know why? You look. I used too much polish at first, then tried to take it back with more buffing instead of less polish. He looks at you again. The same look Mrs. Ackroyd gave you in the passage. Correct. Learn that lesson once. Put them on the shelf. He leaves. You put them on the shelf. It is 8:10. Somewhere above your head the family's beginning their day. The bells start at 8:30. The board is in the passage, and you can hear each bell ring a small, clear, insistent note, and see the corresponding striker swing. You learn very quickly which bell sounds like which note. The morning room is a slightly flat B. The library is a warmer tone. The drawing room has a richer, longer sustain than the others. When the morning room bell rings, William the footman goes. He's been doing this for 6 years. He moves without hurrying, which is different from moving slowly. His pace is exactly calibrated, fast enough to be prompt, controlled enough to not appear rushed. Rushing, Mr. Finch explained during breakfast, suggests panic, which suggests things are not in order, which is never an impression to create. You watch William go and you think, that's how you're supposed to look. That's what I have to learn to do. The second time the morning room bell rings, William is in the dining room assisting with the breakfast service. Mr. Finch is in the butler's pantry reviewing the wine for tonight's dinner. The bell rings. Agnes, passing through the passage, looks at you. Go, she says, you go. The route from the servants' passage to the morning room takes you up a back staircase. Stone, narrow for servants, through a door that opens into the main house corridor, along the corridor at William's pace. Remember William's pace. To the first door on the left. You stop outside the door. There is a moment here, a moment that nobody told you about, because on the other side of this door is the world you work for, the actual life of the house, the part of things that all the coal carrying and boot blacking and fire laying is in service of, and you've never been in that world before, not even for a moment, not in any house like this, not ever. You have 2 seconds of understanding this. Then you knock. 1 knock. Measured. Enter. The morning room is painted the yellow of butter in good grass-fed summer. That's your first impression. Warmth, colour, light. The fire you laid at 6 o'clock this morning is burning cleanly, doing exactly what a fire should do, making the room feel like something a room is supposed to feel like. There are 2 women. One is seated at a small desk near the window writing something. She's perhaps 40, with a face that has been pretty and is now something better. Interesting. This is Lady Harrow. The other, standing by the fire with a cup of something hot, is younger. Early 20s. She's the wife of the eldest son visiting for the season. Both of them look at you. You say, "You rang, my lady." Exactly that. The words Mrs. Ackroyd put in your head this morning. You say them and you wait. Lady Harrow says, "The fire in the library needs attending. I believe the coal is running low." "Yes, my lady. I'll see to it immediately." You turn. You go. You make it back through the door and into the corridor before the particular tension in your chest releases. It wasn't difficult. It wasn't complicated. It was 6 words from you and 12 from her, and it was done. But you notice, walking back toward the servants' stairs, that your hands are shaking slightly. You don't know why. You had nothing to fear. No one was angry. No one was unkind. You were just in the presence of someone for whom you are part of the furniture, and something in you responded to that with a kind of animal alertness, a hyper-vigilance, as though a fine thread had been stretched between you and the room, and the slightest wrong movement would snap it. You learn, in the next weeks, that this is normal. Most servants live in this state of mild hypervigilance when in the presence of the family. You learn to manage it, to function within it, until it becomes the background hum of your working life. But today, your first day, you feel it clean, undiluted. You fetch coal for the library. You attend the fire. You leave before Lady Harrow comes in to use the room. It is 12:30 before you eat again. In Thornwick you ate at 7, at noon, and again at 6. 3 meals, predictable, even if the meals themselves were sometimes thin. Here, you eat when the work allows. It and the work doesn't allow it until Mrs. Hargreaves has finished the family's luncheon service, which means the kitchen isn't your domain until after 1. By noon, you are hungry in a specific way you haven't been hungry before. Not the sharp, demanding hunger of having skipped a meal. More a dull, spreading hollowness, a sense of your own body requiring attention at a time when no attention can be paid to it. Your stomach makes itself known with a subtle, persistent insistence, the way a creditor knocks rather than pounds. You learn to ignore this. You learn, watching Agnes and the kitchen maids, to carry a piece of bread in your pocket from breakfast. Just a piece, and nothing that would be noticed. Mrs. Hargreaves knows about it, and she pretends not to. It's a kind of unspoken arrangement. She doesn't leave you hungry if she can help it. But the structure of the day means sometimes the only option is what you can quietly carry. The bread is in your coat pocket. You eat it in the passage during a moment between tasks, standing in about 45 seconds. It tastes like someone has put flour and water and a small amount of care into the same container. It is the most satisfying thing you've eaten all day. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you've begun to understand the secret geography of Harrowfield Hall. There is the house that the family inhabits, and there is the house that you inhabit. They overlap in certain rooms and certain passages, but they are, in a meaningful sense, parallel worlds. The family's house, the rooms you can see from the drive, The high-ceilinged elegance, the turkey carpets and the plasterwork and the portraits on the walls, the morning room and the library and the dining room with its table that seats 24 and its silver that Mr. Finch polishes like an act of devotion. Your house, the warren beneath and behind all that, the passage that runs like a spine through the base of the building, the back stairs, 5 separate staircases, connecting the servant world to the family world at careful intervals. The rooms behind the rooms, the linen room where clean sheets are folded in cedar-smelling stacks, the housemaid's closet stocked with mops and brushes and cleaning materials, the coal holes beneath the yard, the ice house in the kitchen garden sunk into the earth, where blocks of ice cut from the lake in January sit in straw and last until August. You learn the secret geography because your job requires it. The coal must come from the yard, through the door at the back, down the passage, up the back stairs, into each room where a fire needs building. There are protocols for this journey, times when back stairs can be used, and times when the sound of footsteps above would disturb someone sleeping or working. There are rooms in the family's house you're permitted to enter. There are rooms you will never enter under any circumstances. The bedroom of Lord Harrow, Mr. Finch attends it personally, and no other servant enters without explicit instruction. Lady Harrow's dressing room, Agnes and the head housemaid Martha. The rooms of the visiting family. Their own servants attend them. You stay out, learn the map, learn it quickly. Getting it wrong, entering a room you shouldn't, being in a corridor at a time you shouldn't, has consequences that range from Mrs. Ackroyd's expression of cool disappointment, which is quietly devastating, to something much worse. Much worse meaning Mr. Finch's expression, which is no expression at all, which is somehow worse than any expression could be. You have not yet experienced this. You are told about it by Daniel on your first evening. Finch doesn't shout, Daniel says. They are in the attic room, Daniel preparing for bed with the systematic efficiency of someone who has learned to value every minute of sleep. Finch goes very quiet, very still, like a watch that stopped. And then he looks at you with that face and says whatever he says, usually about 4 words, and then he's done, and you'll wish he'd shouted. You ask Daniel what's the worst thing he's seen Finch react to. Daniel thinks about this. Tom, the hall boy before you, came upstairs, the main stairs, through the front hall, just took the front stairs because he was in a hurry. Lady Harrow saw him come out of the staircase door. What happened? Nothing that day. She didn't say anything. A pause. But Finch found out. They always find out. And Tom was brought into the butler's pantry, and it was 4 minutes of very quiet words, and Tom came out white as chalk. Is that why Tom left? Tom left because his father was ill. But yes, after that, he was looking for a reason to leave. You lie in your narrow bed in the cold attic and you absorb this. Don't use the front stairs. Don't be where you shouldn't be. Don't be seen when you shouldn't be seen. The rules are simple. The simplicity is deceptive. The cook's name is Eleanor Hargreaves, and she is the second most powerful person in this house, and she knows it, and she does not need you to know it because it is simply true. Mrs. Ackroyd runs the household. Mrs. Hargreaves runs the kitchen. These are 2 different things, and for most of the house's daily life they run parallel without crossing. Where they cross, there is sometimes friction, and the friction has rules of its own that you will take months to properly understand. Mrs. Hargreaves is not unkind. She is not kind exactly. She's professional in a way that is so thorough it leaves no room for warmth, but also no room for cruelty. She runs her kitchen the way a general runs a campaign, with attention to supply lines, timing, and the absolute priority of the objective. The objective in Mrs. Hargreaves' case is that the food arrives at the family's table at exactly the right temperature, in exactly the right state, in exactly the right order, at exactly the right time. Everything in the kitchen is in service of this. The hierarchy below stairs begins with Mrs. Ackroyd for the household and Mr. Finch for the formal service. But in this room specifically, Mrs. Hargreaves is the absolute authority. You will spend a portion of each day in or around her domain. She explains your kitchen obligations on your first day, standing at the big wooden table in the centre of the kitchen, not looking at you, but at the turnip she's reducing to a particular shape, with a knife that moves with frightening precision. You will carry water from the pump. You will carry coal to the range. You will carry waste to the yard. You will do what you are asked when you are asked, without needing to be asked twice. The knife continues its work. There are 3 things you do not do in my kitchen. You do not touch the food unless instructed. You do not open the range without asking. You do not tell me anything about the time. This last one confuses you slightly. She sees your expression. Every servant who has ever worked in this kitchen has at some point appeared in my doorway and said, "Mrs. Hargreaves, it's nearly 6:30, as if I do not know, as if I have not known for the past 4 hours, as if that information is helpful to me. The knife comes down cleanly through the last turnip. She looks up. I am always aware of the time. It is the central fact of my existence. You will never make me more aware of it by announcing it. Yes, Mrs. Hargreaves. Good. She considers you for a moment. You can carry the stockpot water, 20 pints. The pump is in the scullery. Take 2 buckets. You take 2 buckets. 10 pints is, you discover, heavier than it looks. The 2 buckets together, carried at your sides, pulling at your arms, swinging slightly as you walk, manage to transfer approximately a quarter of their contents onto the floor, your stockings, and your shoes before you reach the stove. The water soaks through your stocking immediately. Cold against the ankle. You keep moving. You go back for more. By the end of the day, your hands have a new set of marks on them. The red ridges left by bucket handles, raised welts across the top of your fingers where the handle's edge bit in, and the deep ache in the shoulders that comes from carrying weight at the wrong angle for too long. You will carry better tomorrow. Already your body is filing away. Center the weight. Keep your shoulders back, small steps. Your body is learning the job even as your head is still trying to understand the rules. But the real education of the first day happens in the evening. Lord Harrow is entertaining tonight. He often entertains. Harrowfield Hall is a social house, and the family is at the centre of a web of obligations and relationships, political, social, economic, that require regular feeding and watering in the form of dinners and hunting parties and overnight visits. Tonight, 12 guests. Dinner at 7. 7 courses. This means the entire household is operating at something close to its maximum capacity, and the entire household, including you, is part of it. Mr. Finch calls the footmen and hall boy together at 5 o'clock. He's wearing his formal livery, which is a more elaborate version of your own. Darker blue, more gilt on the buttons, white gloves. He looks, in his formal livery, like he's been placed in the world specifically for this purpose, and the world has arranged itself accordingly. "Tonight's service," he says. "This is not complicated. What it is precise. Precision is everything." He goes through it, the sequence of courses, who sits where, which glasses are for which wines, which will be poured when, the exact order of service at the table. You begin at the guest of honour who is seated to Lord Harrow's right, and proceed to the left side of the table, then the right, then Lady Harrow's end. You never cross the paths of the other footmen. You never reach across a guest. You place dishes from the left, remove from the right. You offer. You do not impose. If a guest drops a fork, Mr. Finch says, you replace it within 10 seconds without comment. If a glass is knocked and breaks, you clear it without comment and without haste. If anything spills that can be managed quietly, you manage it quietly. You do not react. You do not create reactions. He looks at you specifically. You are not at table tonight. You are in the service corridor. You carry dishes from the kitchen to the serving table. You carry the used dishes back. You do not enter the dining room unless I specifically request it. Yes, sir. If I specifically request it, you enter at the door nearest the serving table. You go directly to the serving table. You do what needs doing. You leave. You do not look at the guests. You do not look at the family. You look at the task in front of you. He pauses. Questions. Not a question. A space for questions, in case there are any. There aren't. Or rather, there are dozens, but you've already learned that the questions you have are probably the wrong questions, and the right questions will only become clear once you've done the thing a few times. You go to your position. The service corridor runs along one side of the dining room. It connects to the kitchen at one end via a short passage, and to the main house at the other via a door that opens near the main staircase. It is narrow, perhaps 3 feet wide, enough for 2 people to pass if both turn sideways. Tonight, with the dinner in progress, there are at minimum 4 of you using it. You, William, Daniel and Agnes, who is acting as a runner between the corridor and the kitchen. The corridor smells of food, intense, close, the concentrated smell of 7 courses being prepared simultaneously in the kitchen 30 feet away. Roast beef, something with cream and shallots, the buttery richness of a pastry dish, and beneath all of that the heavy bass note of the stock that has been simmering since this morning. The heat coming through the kitchen door hits you in the face every time Agnes opens it. A wave of warm air heavy with cooking smells before the cold of the stone corridor reasserts itself. You are stationed at the midpoint of the corridor. Your job, when Agnes or one of the kitchen maids arrives with a dish from the kitchen, you take it, confirm with William which order it goes in, and pass it through the door into the dining room to William or Daniel, who take it to the table. You are a relay point. You are part of the mechanism. The first course goes smoothly. The soup, a turtle soup, which you know costs a considerable amount and which Mrs. Hargreaves has been preparing in stages since yesterday. The tureen is large and heavy, silver, very hot. Agnes carries it from the kitchen with 2 cloths wrapped around her hands and an expression of total concentration. You take it from her. The weight is serious, and the heat bleeds through the cloths against your palms, not burning but insistent. Your arms take the weight, and your hands register the heat through the cloths, and you pass it to William with a smoothness that surprises you a little. He takes it without acknowledgement. He's already moving. Between courses, the corridor is busy in a different way. Dishes coming back, the empty soup bowls, the wiped clean bread plates. These you stack on the cart at the end of the corridor to go back to the scullery. You do this while managing not to collide with Agnes bringing the fish course. which requires a brief moment of complex spatial negotiation in a 3-foot space. Agnes is better at this than you. She is smaller, and she has done it before. She slides past you with the fish course, poached sole with a sauce that smells of white wine and herbs, and you flatten yourself against the wall, and the dish passes your face close enough that you could lean 2 inches forward and taste it. You don't. The 4th course is when the small crisis happens. The 4th course is a remove, a haunch of venison, roasted, important, significant. Mrs. Hargreaves has been watching over it personally since 3 o'clock. It arrives from the kitchen on a platter carried by one of the kitchen maids. Not Agnes, one of the others. The girl called Nell, who's been here 2 years but is nervous tonight because it's a larger dinner than usual. Nell's hands are shaking slightly. You can see it in the way the platter oscillates, a barely perceptible tremor. The platter transfers to you, and the moment it transfers to you, one of the candles in the corridor sconce flickers. The door at the far end has opened slightly, a cold draught, and for 1 second everything shifts and tilts, and the venison haunch on its great silver platter seems to lurch to the left. It doesn't. You hold it. Your hands tighten around the platter edges and the weight redistributes, and you do not drop it. The silver is hot against your palms. You hold it for a moment, perfectly still, breathing. Then you pass it to William. William takes it without acknowledgement. He's already moving. You stand in the corridor for a moment after he's gone through the door. Your hands are trembling now, the way they weren't when it mattered. Agnes, coming back from the kitchen with something, sees your face. You held it, she says quietly. Yes. Good. She continues past you. Would have been the end of you if you'd dropped that. She says this without malice, just as fact, the way Mrs. Ackroyd states facts. You know she's right. You compose yourself. You pick up the empty fish course platter from the cart. You continue. Dinner ends at 9:30. The family moves to the drawing room for what will become a late evening of cards and conversation. This part of the night you're not involved in, or you're involved in the way you've been involved in everything today, invisibly. Keeping the fire banked, keeping the candles replaced as they burn down, being there and not there simultaneously. The kitchen, however, is at full crisis. 7 courses of serving means 7 courses of washing up. The soup tureen alone requires 20 minutes of careful attention. The venison platter, the sauce boats, the wine glasses. There are 64 of them tonight, and each one must be washed, dried with a linen cloth, held up to the light, checked for spots, replaced if any watermark is visible. You are in the scullery until 11:30. Your hands, by the end of it, are bright red and slightly raw from the water and the washing. The water in the scullery sink starts warm and ends cold, and the transition between warm and cold is hard on skin that isn't used to it. Each time you plunge your hands back in to retrieve the next glass, there's a moment of adjustment, the skin protesting slightly, before you get to work. By the last of the glasses you can barely feel the tips of your fingers. Bess, the scullery maid, is still there when you finish, working on the last of the copper pots. She's been at it for 2 hours already. She will be at it for perhaps another hour. Do you want... You start. I'm fine, she says. Go to bed. I can help. She looks at you. It's a look with layers you can't quite pass yet. You start at 5:30 tomorrow, same as today. You need to sleep. So do you. I start at 4:30, said flatly, not complaining, just the arithmetic. Go to bed. You go. The attic room is cold and black when you get there. You've brought a tallow candle, one of the kitchen candles legitimate, and its light makes the room into something almost bearable. Warm gold playing on the bare boards and the white plaster walls. Daniel is already asleep. His breathing is slow and definitive, the breathing of someone who has made an agreement with unconsciousness and intends to honour it. You sit on the edge of your bed and take stock of your body, your feet first. You take your shoes off and your stockings, and your feet are cold, and there are new sore places on your heels from standing all day on stone floors in shoes that are not quite right for the purpose. You've covered perhaps 4 miles in this house today, you estimate. All of it indoors. All of it carrying something, or looking for something, or moving quickly to be somewhere else. Your hands. The boot blacking from this morning has come out in the washing mostly, but the knuckles are reddened and there's a stiffness in the joints that wasn't there this morning. A deep ache, not painful exactly, but present, aware of itself, the joints protesting the unfamiliar repetition, carrying the coal, the water, the dishes. Your hands have been employed constantly, and they're reporting this fact with a thoroughness you didn't ask for. Your back. The specific ache of a day spent bending over tasks, the boots, the coal buckets, the washing up, has settled into your lower back as a dull, persistent presence. Not sharp, just there, a weight you can't put down. And your mind. Your mind is a different kind of tired. Not slow tired, not the pleasant heaviness of physical work, but overfull. Too much information in too short a time. Too many names, too many rules, too many things you don't yet know the consequences of getting wrong. The first rule, don't be seen. The boots, which polish for which leather. The bells, which note is which room. The dinner, hold it steady. Don't drop it. Don't use the front stairs. Don't tell Mrs. Hargreaves the time. Don't touch the silver without instruction. Never be where you shouldn't be. Always be where you should be, and be there early. The candle on the windowsill gutters. Outside the small attic window, Harrowfield Hall's grounds are invisible in the dark. You know they're there. The kitchen garden, the stable yard, the park stretching out to the tree line, the lake somewhere in the middle distance that you haven't seen yet. But you can't see them. Tonight the house has closed around you completely, and this room, this cold, bare room, is all there is. You blow out the candle. In the dark you lie back on the straw mattress and feel the ceiling pressing down toward you, and you think, this is real. This is the life. Not the life you imagined, perhaps. Not any clear, specific thing. Just, this is real, and you are in it. And tomorrow it starts again. Things accumulate fast. By the end of the 3rd day, you have learned to carry coal without spilling. The trick is in the container. The coal scuttle has a particular weight and a particular point of balance, and once you find it in your body and it stays there. By the end of the 5th day, you have learned to lay a fire that lights on the first attempt. This sounds simple. It is not. Wood arrangement, coal proportion, kindling positioning, the direction of the draught in each specific fireplace, in each specific room. Every fire is individual. You learn them one by one. By the end of the week, you know the back stairs well enough to use them in the dark, which you will need to, because the rule about candles below a certain level is strict. You don't use a candle for your own purposes if it's during work hours. You light the candles for the family. You carry them and maintain them and replace them. You do not use them for yourself. You navigate by touch and memory. Your feet learn the count. 6 steps to the first landing, turn right, 8 steps to the second, duck your head at the 7th. There's a low beam, a beam that has been there for 100 years and has been forgotten by everyone who knows the stairs well, and remembered painfully by everyone who doesn't. Turn left, door. You also learn the things nobody explicitly tells you, like the order of precedence below stairs mirrors the order above stairs, with its own strict protocol. At meals in the servants' hall, there is a seating order. Mrs. Ackroyd at the head, Mr. Finch at the other end, the hierarchy arranged along the sides, the lower servants, you, Agnes, Bess, the kitchen maids, at the far end nearest the door. You do not arrive at the table before your superiors. You do not begin eating before Mrs. Ackroyd does. You do not speak freely until after the first course, when the formality relaxes slightly, like the difference between a direct request from a superior and a suggestion from a peer. Mrs. Ackroyd asks you to do something. You do it immediately. Mrs. Hargreaves asks you to do something. You do it immediately. If William or Daniel asks you to do something, you do it immediately because they are senior to you. But you learn to read the difference between a request that comes from their authority and one that comes from their convenience. Like the unwritten rule about the back garden. There is a kitchen garden behind a high wall. On Sunday afternoons, the one portion of the week that is theoretically yours, certain servants walk in the kitchen garden. Mrs. Hargreaves has a section she cultivates, herself, small and precise, herbs and things she uses directly. Some of the maids walk together there and talk in the way they can't talk during work. You're welcome to walk in the kitchen garden on Sunday afternoons. You're not welcome to walk in any other part of the grounds. Nobody tells you this. You learn it the second Sunday when you wander without thinking, along a path that takes you from the kitchen garden gate, through a gap in the wall toward the formal garden, and you're halfway across the gravel walk when you see Lady Harrow, accompanied by her daughter, and a girl from the village who has come to visit, walking directly toward you. You do what you have learned to do. You stop. You step to the side. You look at the ground. They pass. None of them acknowledge you. You wait until they have rounded the corner of the yew hedge, and then you go back through the gap in the wall, and you walk in the kitchen garden for the rest of the afternoon. When you go back inside, Agnes is in the passage. She looks at you with an expression that tells you she saw. Stick to the kitchen garden, she says. I know, you say. Now you know, she says, and goes back to what she was doing. Daniel Crooks is not your friend. He is not exactly unkind. He occupies a position above you in the hierarchy that means he doesn't need to be unkind in any active sense. He simply needs to let the structure do its work, which it does. But Daniel is something more useful than a friend. He is experienced. 4 years at Harrowfield. He has made every mistake that can be made in this house and survived it, and he's developed a particular dry clarity about the rules that comes from having learned them the hard way. On the 9th evening he begins to talk. Not because he wants to talk to you particularly. He is sitting at the attic window looking at the dark and talking almost to himself, and you happen to be there. The thing about this place, he says, is that the rules aren't the rules. You put down the boot you've been checking. Tomorrow is a hunt day, which means extra attention to the riding boots. And wait. The rules, he continues, are what Mrs. Ackroyd tells you, what Mr. Finch tells you, what you can read off the bellboard or learn by watching how William does things. Those rules you can learn. You learn them in a month, 2 months. They're just procedures. He looks at the window. A rectangle of black, this time of year. Nothing outside worth seeing. The real rules, he says, are different. He pauses. This is not for dramatic effect. He is genuinely thinking about how to say something he has never quite put into words. The family has moods, he says finally, like weather. Lord Harrow gets up in a bad mood sometimes. Doesn't happen often. He's not a bad-tempered man by nature. But when it does happen, the whole house changes. Something comes through the walls. You can feel it, even down here. You think about this. When that happens, Daniel continues, you are doubly invisible. You do not walk quickly near his rooms because quick footsteps sound like urgency, which sounds like something being wrong. You do not make noise with a coal scuttle. You make sure the fires are perfect. You make sure nothing requires his attention. How do you know when it's happening? You know. He taps his chest. After a while, you just know. Finch knows immediately. I think he can sense it, the way a dog senses a storm. He'll be different. You watch Finch when you're not sure about the mood of the house. If Finch is normal, things are probably fine. If Finch is very quiet, very careful, you're careful too. He is quiet for a moment. Lady Harrow is easier. She's more consistent. But she has a tell too. When she's troubled, she moves faster. Her steps are quicker when something's wrong. You learn to read it. You absorb this. This is what nobody in the servants' hall talks about, Daniel says, almost to himself. Nobody says, you're reading the emotional state of your employers all day, every day, and calibrating your every action to it. But you are. Every servant in every house in England is doing exactly this, every day, and calling it service. He turns away from the window. Get some sleep, he says. Hunt day tomorrow, up at 5. He gets into bed and is asleep within minutes. You sit in the dark a while longer, thinking about weather. On the 11th day, Mrs. Ackroyd summons you. Her room is on the ground floor of the servants' wing. A small, precise room with a fireplace, a desk, a chair, and a bookshelf holding ledgers, and a Bible, and what appears to be a manual on household management. She's at her desk when you enter. She has a ledger open and is writing something in it with the attention of someone who believes that accurate records are a form of virtue. She finishes her entry. She closes the ledger. She looks at you. Sit down. A chair by the desk. You sit in it. You've been here 11 days, she says. I have been watching you. She pauses. You're careful. You learn fast. You do not argue, and you do not ask more questions than you need to. These are good qualities. You wait. You need to understand something that I don't usually say explicitly to new hall boys, because most hall boys don't have the capacity to act on it. But you might. She opens the ledger again, not to read it, just as a way of settling her hands. This position, hall boy, footman, even a senior footman, it is a position. It is not a destination. The boys who come here thinking it is a destination, who do their work and collect their wages and think about nothing else, they are here for 3 years, 5 years, and then they go somewhere else and do the same thing for a slightly higher wage, and they are good servants, but they are nothing more than that. You nod. The boys who understand that a position in a house like this is an education, those are the ones who become something. Something like what, you ask? The question is slightly too direct. You feel it as it leaves your mouth, but she doesn't rebuke you. A butler, a house steward, a position of genuine authority. She looks at you steadily. Mr. Finch came here as a hall boy. He was 16 years old, and he had never been in a house bigger than a vicarage. He became butler to Lord Harrow at 34. He has managed this household for 20 years. She closes the ledger again. He watched everything. He asked questions only when it was appropriate to ask them, and when he asked them, he never asked the same question twice. He understood that his employer's comfort was not an end in itself, but a skill, and that skill could be developed and refined. He became, over time, the best servant in Yorkshire. A pause. You show some of those qualities, some of them. She rises. The interview apparently is over. Continue as you have been. Work hard. Watch Mr. Finch when you're not sure what to do. Come to me if there is a problem you cannot resolve. Do not bring me small problems. Do not bring Mr. Finch problems you should be able to solve yourself. She holds the door open. And learn the rules, she says. All of them. Not just the ones that are written down. You are accumulating them. A private list. The written rules. The bellboard. The hierarchy. The cleaning schedules. The times. The dress code. The protocols of service. These are real and important, and you have mostly mastered them. But the unwritten list is longer and more important. Rule: never, under any circumstances, let the family see you hurry. Even if you are urgently needed elsewhere, even if something is wrong. The appearance of calm is more important than actual calm. The family's comfort depends partly on the reassurance that nothing in the house is ever wrong, and your face and your pace are part of that reassurance. Rule: if something breaks, and it is small enough to be managed, manage it before reporting it. If a candle holder chips, see if the chip can be placed out of sight. If a plate chips, set it aside and report to Mrs. Ackroyd. She will decide whether it is discarded or placed in the servants' hall rotation. You do not throw things away without authority, even broken things. Rule: if a guest asks you a direct question, you answer it directly and briefly. You do not expand. You do not offer opinions. But, and this is important, you do not appear stupid. You give the smallest accurate answer possible, and you do so with the confidence of someone who knows exactly what they're about. Rule: the family has private conversations. You hear them sometimes. You hear things you're not supposed to hear, because you're in rooms changing candles or laying fires, and the family comes in before you've left. Or you're in the corridor and voices carry. What you hear, you forget. Immediately. Permanently. It is not yours. This last rule you understand almost, philosophically before you understand it practically. And then, on the 17th day, you understand it practically. You're in the library. It is afternoon. You're replacing the candles in the sconces, a task that takes time, candle by candle, each one needing to be taken out, the spent stub removed, the new candle fitted, the wick trimmed if necessary. You are halfway through when Lord Harrow enters with his eldest son. They are in the middle of a conversation. You have not finished. You cannot leave without completing the task because half-replaced candles are visible and wrong. You cannot complete the task in less than 5 minutes, and you cannot complete it without being present in the room. You do the only thing you can do. You continue as quietly as you can, and you hear nothing. This is not metaphor. You actively hear nothing. Whatever words come through the air in the next 5 minutes, your mind processes them as sound and discards them. You are aware that they are speaking about money, about a property, about a situation involving someone whose name you do not register. You are aware of tone, some tension, some resolution by the end. But content, nothing. You finish the last candle. You bow slightly. They do not see it. You leave. In the corridor you breathe. You've heard nothing. Daniel, when you tell him later, not what was said, just that you were in the room when the family entered. nods with a kind of respect. You held it. Second time you've said that to me, you say. Second time you've done it, he says. November becomes December. The cold deepens. The water in the basin in your attic room freezes overnight on the colder nights, and you break it each morning with your fist, a hard, crackling blow, ice shards sliding, the water beneath it numbingly cold against your knuckles. The shock of it travels up your arm to the shoulder. Every morning you wash in this water. Every morning you do not have the luxury of warm water for your own washing. Warm water is made in the kitchen, and it's made for the family. Your hands by mid-December are cracked at the knuckles. Small splits in the skin, not deep but present, that sting when cold water touches them. They catch on things, on the rough linen cloths, on the edge of the coal scuttle handle. Tiny stinging reminders that you're being worn in, the way the stone stairs are being worn, by repeated contact. Mrs. Ackroyd notices this during the third week, and without comment provides you with a small pot of tallow-based cream from the medicine cabinet she keeps in her room. Apply it at night, she says, before sleep. Your hands are your work. Damaged hands are inefficient. You apply it at night. The smell of it is animal, faintly unpleasant, but by morning the cracks are slightly better. By the end of the week they are manageable. You keep using the cream. Practical compassion, that's what it is. Mrs. Ackroyd's care for your hands is not personal warmth. It is the care a craftsman takes of good tools. But it is care, and in this house, in this position, in this December cold, it is enough. The Christmas season brings increased traffic to the house. More guests. 2 of Lord Harrow's daughters return with their husbands. One of them brings 3 children, who are aged between 4 and 9, and who generate a completely disproportionate amount of work for their size. You are kept busy. The fires need doubling. The additional guests mean additional bedrooms in use, which means additional cleaning, additional water carrying, additional fires. The meals become more elaborate. Mrs. Hargreaves' kitchen operates at a level of intensity that fills the servants' passage with concentrated food smells from 5 in the morning until 10 at night. You become, in this period, genuinely good at your job. Not excellent, that will take longer, but good. Your hands stop shaking when you carry the important dishes. You no longer freeze at the bellboard trying to remember which note is which room. You know the backstairs in the dark without thinking. The coal scuttle travels from yard to room in your hands with the same automatic ease that walking does. Your body doing it, your mind available for other things. And you begin to see the house differently, not as a test, as it felt in the beginning, not as a set of rules to be memorized and not broken, as a system, complex, precise, interdependent. 40 people making one thing work. Mrs. Ackroyd managing the whole from above. Mr. Finch managing the formal service. Mrs. Hargreaves managing the food. Below them, the footmen, the housemaids, the kitchen maids, the scullery maid, the laundry maid, and you, new, learning, at the base of all of it. One small component, but part of it. That's the thing that surprises you in December when you have time to notice things. You are part of it. The machine includes you. When you carry the coal correctly, when you lay, the fire's on time, when you hold the dishes steady through the dinner service, the whole thing runs. When any component fails, something shows. A cold room, a late course, a candle that gutters in the wrong moment. Your work matters. It is invisible, and it matters. This is a strange thing to reconcile, but reconciling strange things is, you're beginning to understand, a primary occupation of a life in service. On Christmas Eve, the household does something unusual. Lord Harrow has a tradition, has had it, apparently, for as long as anyone can remember. The older servants reference it as something that has always happened, as though it predates the current family entirely, as though it belongs to the stone of the house rather than to any particular generation. At 6 o'clock in the evening, the family and the servants assemble together in the great hall. This is one of the few moments in the year when the barrier between the two worlds becomes, briefly, permeable. The family stands, at one end of the hall, the servants at the other. Lord Harrow makes a short speech, brief, dignified, the speech of a man who understands the value of brevity, thanking the household for its service in the past year. Mrs. Ackroyd and Mr. Finch stand at the front of the servants. You stand near the back with Agnes and the kitchen maids. Then Lord Harrow and Lady Harrow move through the servants, speaking briefly to each one. You watch this as they approach. The way Lord Harrow speaks to Mr. Finch, man to man, genuinely, 20 years of working alongside each other visible in the ease of it. The way he speaks to Mrs. Ackroyd, with the careful courtesy of a man who is deeply aware that without her, this house does not function. The way he speaks to the footmen and maids, correctly, kindly, briefly. He reaches you. He is taller than he looks from a distance, 60 or thereabouts, his hair gone mostly white, his face marked by weather and years and something that might be intelligence. He looks at you. Actually looks. "The new boy," he says, not a question. "Yes, my lord." "Thomas Kite, my lord." "Thornwick." "Yes, my lord." "Pembridge's recommendation." "Yes, my lord." A pause. He's considering something. "You've been here, what, 6 weeks?" 7 weeks and 2 days, my lord." He smiles, not widely, just a flicker. 7 weeks and 2 days? Yes. He looks at you a moment longer. "Mr. Finch tells me you have an aptitude." You don't know what to say to this. You say nothing, which might be the right response. "Good," Lord Harrow says, in the way of a man who has said what he intended to say. "Keep it up." He moves on to Agnes, who has gone slightly pink. You stand with the warmth of those words in your chest for the rest of the evening. Mr. Finch told him you have an aptitude. 7 weeks ago you didn't know which polish was for which leather. Here is what you learn, slowly, over the weeks of your first winter at Harrowfield. That comfort is a craft. Not a luxury, not a given, not something that exists naturally in the world. Comfort is made with coal and kindling and carefully trimmed wicks, made with precisely heated water and correctly applied boot black and tables set to within an inch of perfection, made by 40 people rising before the sun so that one family can live as though the morning arranges itself. And there is a pride in this, you find, not the pride of being celebrated. You are not celebrated, you are barely seen, but the pride of craft, the satisfaction of a fire that lights clean on the first match, a boot that gives back the light, a dinner course that arrives at the right temperature and in the right order, and creates for the people eating it the impression of effortlessness. Effortlessness is the product. All the effort is what produces it. That's the paradox you live in. That's the hidden logic of the world below stairs. You also learn the hierarchy is real, and it is not cruel. There are cruel versions of this hierarchy. You hear about them from Daniel, who worked briefly at a house in Durham before coming to Harrowfield, where the butler docked wages for minor errors, and the housekeeper had favourites and punished those who weren't. You hear about them from the girls who come through the kitchen, who've had situations where the cook threw things when she was in a temper, where housemaids were expected to do the work of 2 people for the wage of 1. Harrowfield is not like that. The hierarchy is strict, but it is consistent. You know where you stand, you know what is expected. The rules are fixed, and fixed rules you're learning are not the same as cruel rules. Mrs. Ackroyd is not warm, she is just. Mr. Finch is exacting. He is also, you are beginning to see, teaching you something that will outlast your time here. Even in the way he holds a fork, even in the way he speaks to a guest, even in the specific quality of his attention to whatever task is in front of him. Total, present, professional. You're watching a master. You're watching and you are learning in the way that you learn things that matter, not by being told, but by proximity, by absorption, by doing the same work alongside someone who does it right, until doing it right becomes the only way you know how to do it. On a Tuesday afternoon in February, something unexpected happens. You're returning from the coal yard with a full coal scuttle. Heavy, as always. Your hands have adapted now, the calluses and developed grip, meaning the weight is something you manage rather than something that manages you. There's even a rhythm to it. Left shoulder slightly forward, scuttle angled back, small even steps. You take the back passage. You are moving at the correct pace. You round the corner at the base of the north staircase, and you encounter Lady Harrow. She is standing in the passage. This does not happen. The family does not come into the passages. This is, architecturally speaking, not quite right. The passage is technically accessible from the main house, but in practice it is not territory the family enters. Lady Harrow is standing in the passage holding a letter and looking at it with an expression you have not seen on her face before. She looks up when you come around the corner. You stop. She looks at you, not through you. "Kite," she says. "My lady." You don't know what else to say. The training covers this scenario approximately not at all. She looks at you for a moment longer. She is, you understand, deciding something. The way people decide things when they are under a strain they hadn't expected, and they are met unexpectedly by someone who might be trusted. "My lady," she says, almost to herself, "is there something I can fetch, my lady? Shall I get Mrs. Ackroyd?" A pause. "No," she says. "No, No, thank you." She tucks the letter into her sleeve. She straightens. The formality returns to her face the way water returns to level. "Go about. Your work," she says, and the familiar tone is back. Correct. Considered. The tone of a woman in a great house speaking to a servant. You go about your work. You carry the coal up the stairs and into the morning room, and you build the fire with the particular care you bring to everything now, not because anyone is watching, but because you have stopped thinking in terms of being watched. You do it correctly because correct is all there is. That evening, Mrs. Ackroyd calls you in. She closes the door. "You encountered Lady Harrow in the North Passage this afternoon," she says. "Yes, ma'am. She has received some news today that is personal to the family. I do not know what you saw or heard." "I saw Lady Harrow in the passage," you say. "I asked if she needed anything. She said no. I went about my work." Mrs. Ackroyd looks at you steadily. "That," she says, "is exactly right." The cold breaks slowly. There is a morning in March when you carry the coal to the library, and the window at the end of the passage is showing something you haven't seen for months. Colour. Thin winter sunlight, yes, but light with warmth in it. Light that is doing something other than just sitting there being cold. You stop for 3 seconds in front of that window. 3 seconds, no more. You're needed elsewhere. But those 3 seconds are significant. Something in your chest unclenches slightly. Something that has been held tight against the cold for months releases, just a fraction. Not happiness exactly, just the recognition that there is another temperature available and it's coming. Spring at Harrowfield is different from spring in Thornwick, but it rhymes. The kitchen garden wakes up. Mrs. Hargreaves' herb section begins to show green again. The tree line past the kitchen garden wall, the one you can see from the upper windows if you position yourself correctly, develops a faint haze of colour that takes you a moment to identify as bud break. The mood of the house changes. Lord, Harrow has been in London for February, parliamentary business, not that you know the details, and has returned for the spring. His return shifts something in the household's weather the way Daniel described. Not dramatically, just a recalibration of the atmosphere, a retightening of the formal standards that had slightly relaxed in his absence. You have been here 5 months. 5 months and you feel genuinely like you know the house. You know its weather, you know its rhythms, you know the way the morning light moves through the east-facing rooms, warming them first, how the afternoon light shifts into the library, why Mr. Finch always opens the library curtains at exactly 2:30 in the afternoon when the family is using it. Because the light at that angle catches the silver on the side table and makes it glow without glare, an effect that has probably never been consciously noticed by anyone in the family but that Mr. Finch has understood for 20 years. You know, the sounds, the particular tone of the bellboard when the drawing room rings versus the library, the sound of Lord Harrow's footstep on the main staircase versus his son's, heavier, slightly slower, a particular quality of contact with the step that you would recognise now without seeing. The specific creak of the door between the servants' passage and the main hall that means it is being opened carefully, slowly, which means someone is trying not to be heard. You know all of this because you have been paying attention with the particular quality of attention that this life requires. Not the attention of fascination or curiosity, the attention of survival, the attention of someone who must function perfectly in a system and therefore must understand the system perfectly. And you are beginning to understand it, not completely, not yet, maybe not ever completely. But you are inside it now in a way you weren't in November, when you arrived with your bundle and your father's coat and your letter from the vicar. On a Sunday in April, proper spring now, proper light, the kind that comes in sideways and makes everything it touches look like it's been recently washed. You find yourself in the linen room on the upper floor of the servants' wing. You're not supposed to be there. It's your free afternoon and you should be in the kitchen garden or the servants' hall. But you were passing, and the door was open, and there is a window in the linen room that faces north, across the park that you have not looked through before. You look through it now. The park stretches out below you, still brown from winter, but beginning to take on the suggestion of green. The big oaks at the northern edge, bare since November, are showing the first ghost of leaf. The lake in the middle distance is flat silver, calm and still in the April light. The drive curves in from the gate, the gravel freshly raked, and Harrowfield Hall itself. You can see the south and east faces of it from here, the stone warm in the April light, the windows catching the sky, the whole structure settled into the landscape as if it has been here since the landscape was made, as if the fields arranged themselves around it rather than the other way. You've been inside this place for 5 months. You have carried its coal and polished its silver and laid its fires and listened to its bells. You have navigated its passages in the dark. You have held its dishes steady and replaced its candles and absorbed its rules, written and unwritten, the way stone absorbs weather. You are part of it. You look out at the park and you think, this is not where I thought I'd be. The boy from Thornick, 16 years old, carrying a bundle. 5 months ago, this house was a destination, an opportunity, a leap of faith. Now it is the world, not the whole world. You know that. You know there are 100 houses like this in Yorkshire, and 1,000 in England, and a world beyond Yorkshire that you haven't seen. Yet, you know that some of what you've learned here is specific to Harrowfield. Mr. Finch's particular standards, Mrs. Ackroyd's particular order. And some of it is universal, built into the bones of service, applicable anywhere. But this is the world you know. And it is more than you came with. You have skills now, not just boot blacking and coal carrying, something more difficult. The ability to be present and absent simultaneously. The ability to read the temperature of a room, not the temperature of the fire, though you can do that too, but the human temperature, the mood, the need, the thing required without being asked for. The ability to do your work and not need to be seen doing it. That's what you've learned. That's the thing. In Thornick, when you did something well, you expected to be acknowledged. You expected to be seen. You were young and it was natural. Here, you have learned something different. The work is its own acknowledgement. The fire that burns, correctly. The boot that gives back the light. The dish that arrives at exactly the right temperature at exactly the right moment. These things are done and they are done well, and they are seen by no one who matters, no one who would say anything, no one who thinks about them at all. And that is exactly how it is supposed to be. You're beginning to understand this not as a deprivation, but as a kind of discipline, a craft. And you're not sure, standing at the window in the April light, whether that is something to be proud of or something to think carefully about. Both, maybe. You stand there for another minute, then you close the linen room door behind you and go back down the stairs. By May, you have been at Harrowfield for 6 months. By May, you can do the majority of your work without conscious attention. The conscious attention has been absorbed into the body. Your hands know the polishes, your feet know the stairs, your ears know the bells. This frees something up. Capacity that was previously occupied with the rules is now available for something else. You don't know yet what to do with it. Mr. Finch, on an evening in May, comes to find you in the butler's pantry, where you're helping clean the silver after a dinner party. He watches you work for a moment. Then, when did you last write to your parents? You stop. The question surprises you. Mr. Finch has never asked about your family. He has never asked about anything that isn't directly related to the work of the house. Christmas, you say. My mother wrote back in January. Write to them, he says. A parent with a son in service worries. He turns to go. You say, and you're not entirely sure why you say this, except that there is something in the moment that permits it. Did your parents worry? He pauses. He doesn't turn back. My mother, he says, came to see me here when I was in my 2nd year. She came from Harrogate. A full day's travel. She stood outside the servants' entrance for 20 minutes, apparently, before she could bring herself to go in. A pause. She told me afterward that she didn't know what she'd find. She didn't know if her son was still her son. Another pause. I was still her son. He goes. You stand at the silver for a moment. Then you pick up your cloth and continue. Tomorrow you will write a letter. The attic room. June now. The short nights. The window. That small attic window, book-sized, admitting a rectangle of sky, shows darkness, but a dark with something in it. Not the solid black of November, but a deeper blue. The blue of the shortest nights, the blue that will start to lighten before you want it to. You lie on your back. Daniel is asleep, breathing steady beside you. He's finishing his time as second footman this year. He'll be a senior footman by autumn. More responsibility, higher wages. He's already beginning to move differently, carry himself differently. The extra weight of a future. You think about futures. Yours is small and clear and possible. A year as hall boy. Then promotion to footman, if you're good enough, if the position opens. 2 or 3 years as footman. Then, if you learn what needs learning, if you develop what needs developing, the path opens. Not to the family's world. Never that, not exactly. The path is to mastery of this world. Mastery of service itself. The way Mr. Finch has mastered it. The way Mrs. Ackroyd has mastered it. To understand a house the way a musician understands an instrument. To feel its state at any moment. To anticipate its needs before they are expressed. To be the invisible intelligence that makes everything run. That's the thing worth becoming. You're not there yet. You're not close. But you're closer than you were on a November morning when you climbed out of a cart at the bottom of those worn stone steps with a bundle of everything you owned and a letter vouching for your honesty. The sounds of the house drift up, the house settling in, the summer night, a door closing somewhere on the upper floor, a cart on the road beyond the park wall going somewhere at this hour. A bird, an owl maybe, from the direction of the oak grove. Your eyes are heavy. The last long light of the June evening has finally left the sky, the blue replacing itself with the deep that precedes real darkness. And somewhere between that thought and the next one, the house starts to soften. The sounds from below, the kitchen settling, the last footfall on the stone passage, grow fainter, or you're listening less. The body, which has carried coal and polished silver and held dishes steady and walked 4 miles of stone corridors in a single day, is making its requirements known, not urgently, gently, the way water finds the lowest level. Your back, the particular warmth of it against the mattress, the straw giving way to the shape of you, a shape that has been forming for 6 months. The mattress learning you the way the house has. Learned you, your hands. Open on the blanket now. No longer holding anything, no longer needing to hold anything. The calluses that have grown there are smooth in their own way. Harder than the skin around them, but not rough, just different. Earned. Your feet, at the end of the bed, the one slightly cold spot because the blanket doesn't quite reach. You don't move, you're too close to sleep to bother. The sounds thin out further. A church bell somewhere, not close, further away. Maybe the village church at the edge of the park, marking 10 o'clock in a voice so familiar now that you don't count the strikes. You just register. 10. Registered and released. Tomorrow is another day. There will be fires to lay, coal to carry, boots to attend to. A dinner probably, since there are guests for the next several days. The bellboard will ring, and you will know which room and you will go. And you will say the words and wait and do what's needed and leave before you're noticed. Tomorrow. There will be all of this, the same as today, the same as yesterday, the same as all the days stretching out ahead. But that's tomorrow. Right now, in this moment, the house is quiet. The family is somewhere in their lit rooms, their well-tended rooms, their rooms warmed by fires you laid before they woke, and they are comfortable in the way that is invisible, the way that requires you to have been here all day, and they are winding down toward their own rest. And you are in the attic room, small and cold and plain, under your blanket, and you are tired, and you are done. The ceiling is low above you. The window is small. The room is nothing, and it is yours. It is the place you come back to at the end of the day, the place that waits for you. Your mind begins to do the thing that happens at the edge of sleep. It loosens. The specific textures of the day, the coal bucket, the sixth boot, the corridor where you heard nothing, the April window, the June dark, they begin to separate from their context, to float. The boot, the gleam of it, the leather giving back the light, Mrs. Ackroyd's keys, the sound of them as she walks, Lord Harrow's voice, you have an aptitude, the venison platter tilting caught, Mr. Finch's voice in the pantry, write to them. A parent with a son in service worries. I was still her son. Your breathing slows. The blanket is warm enough. The straw is soft enough. The dark is quiet enough. You are warm enough, fed enough, safe enough. You have a roof and a skill and a future that, if not certain, is at least possible. That's more than a lot of people have. That's enough. Centuries will pass. This house, these stones, this arrangement of rooms and passages and fireplaces will change. Some of it will fall. Some of it will be altered beyond recognition. The orange light from the kitchen windows will one day be replaced by something steady and cold and electric. The coal holes will be sealed. The back stairs will be opened up and made into features for people who come to walk through the rooms and understand, if they're paying attention, that all of this once required enormous ongoing human effort. Someone will stand in the passage some day. Not soon, not for a long time, but some day, and look at the worn stone of the back stairs, smooth in the middle, and think, how many feet over how many mornings worn this stone smooth? And they won't know the names. They almost never know the names. But the stone remembers the wear in the stairs, the marks of the tools on the kitchen table, the particular weight of the coal scuttle that hung by the range for so long it left a dent in the flagstone beneath it. All of that is you in the end. All of that is the work, invisible and permanent at once. People will still live in houses, still tend them, still understand somewhere under the surface of daily life that comfort is made, that it doesn't happen on its own, that someone is always responsible for the fire being lit and the water being warm and the thing being in the right place at the right time. Some things don't change. The human need for warmth doesn't change. The satisfaction of a task done properly, done quietly, done so well that nobody notices, that doesn't change either. So let it come. Let sleep take you the way it took Thomas Kite in his attic room on that June night, 270 years ago. Let the day release itself. Let the weight lift from your hands and your back and your shoulders and go wherever weight goes when you sleep. Let the sound of the house get quieter. Let the dark be warm. Let the thoughts slow and soften and finally stop. You've earned this rest, the same as he did, the same as everyone who has ever done a hard day's work in a cold building for people who would not notice them. Take it. And dream of whatever dreams may come. Good night.